The rush is on to get to the ferries. Once inside the terminal, people wait. Look familiar? This isn't Borden or Cape Tormentine, though. It's Denmark. And Danes, like Maritimers, have mixed feelings about waiting.
Well, I think it's boring.
No, that's a part of our culture, waiting for ferries.
We want to go home now.
The quicker the better?
Yes.
For these people, a solution is close at hand. A fixed link is well underway. With the bridge in the Northumberland Strait 3 years away, there are lessons to be learned in this tiny Scandinavian country. For now, at least, Denmark is a country physically divided, split in two by the Great Belt, an 18-kilometer-wide channel linking the North Sea and the Baltic Sea. To the east, the island of Zealand. To the west, Funen. In the middle, a tiny historic island called Sproy. Already, a 6.6-kilometer bridge spans the west side. All but the finishing touches are done here. And construction is well underway on a suspension bridge of 6.8 kilometers that'll span the east side. They'll connect on Sproy, which has been enlarged to 3 times its original size by infilling. Denmark still relies heavily on the state railways to distribute goods, so the West Bridge has a separate rail bed for trains. It'll connect on Sproy with 2 parallel undersea tunnels near the East Bridge. Like the Maritimes, people in Denmark passionately opposed the link. The day the project was officially opened in 1988, protesters showed up with a coffin, complaining it would cost too much, damage the environment, and kill jobs. The fixed link is a costly undertaking for Denmark, with about the same population as Ontario. It all adds up to a whopping $5.5 billion. The public is financing the project through a private company set up by the government called Storebælt. The company will make its profit collecting the bridge tolls. People will pay no more and possibly less than it costs to use the ferry service now, about $100 a car return. The rail link is scheduled to open in just 2 years. Vehicles will cross only when the East Bridge is finished, scheduled for 1998. The whole link will replace an extensive state-run ferry service. It makes 60,000 crossings every year. The West Bridge is Europe's longest combined road and railway bridge. Its design is very similar to the bridge being built from PEI to New Brunswick. Our bridge will look a lot like this one, with a few minor differences. At just 25 meters above the Great Belt, this bridge is not as tall as the one being built by Strait Crossing Joint Venture, which will be 60 meters at its highest point to let ships through. Here, the East Bridge on the other side will allow for navigation. There's no ice in the Great Belt, at least not this year. Ice only gets bad every 5 years or so. And by Danish standards, that means ice a meter thick. In the Northumberland Strait, ferries face ice up to 3 meters thick almost every year.
So it was only the outer layer.
Professor Niels Gimsing is one of the world's leading experts on bridge building. He's a consultant to Storebælt on the project, and he says ice in the Northumberland Strait should pose no problem.
What do you think the possibilities are of ice damage to the bridge?
Well, if the bridge is designed to withstand the ice and you have good statistics on the thickness of the ice that you can expect there, I wouldn't expect any special problems. The bridge can certainly be designed to cope with ice, even with a thickness of 3 meters.
In fact, Gimsing says the bridge will have to close only 1 hour a year because of bad weather. That's less than the Danish ferries, which are forced to close about 6 hours a year. One of the most dramatic sights in the Northumberland Strait come spring 1995 will be this crane at work. The Danes have named it Svanen, or Swan, and right now it's sitting idle here at the former fabrication yard site at Lindholm. These pontoons are the size of a football field, and the crane is 60 meters high, but it needs to be even taller and stronger for its PEI job.
Looking at the cameraman's view from the top of the Swan, it's hard to believe this ship could get much taller, but a refit this summer will add 30 meters. The Swan's been sold to Strait Crossing Joint Venture for about $25 million. The giant crane has worked here in Denmark for the past 2.5 years, carrying huge bridge components, some weighing 7,000 tons, and placing them with great precision within millimeters.
So is this a good job working on this one?
Yeah.
Engineer Karsten Simonsen is on Strait Crossing Joint Venture's payroll, maintaining the Swan while it waits for refit. He says the weather can make the crane's work tricky.
So on a day like this, if it was this windy out, could we go out?
Yeah.
No
There was
problem.
No problem. No problem.
And the water's choppy? No problem?
No problem.
Okay, so how many days would you say altogether in people waiting have you lost to bad weather?
It's quite difficult to say because lost in total, because sometimes you could go out and it starts blowing, and then you have to lay standby out there in positioning and waiting that you can move in and place the bridge element. But maybe 3-4 days or something, and on the whole project it have been nothing nearly, so it's nothing to talk about.
We've only got 3 seasons on the water with this crane to get the whole bridge done.
Yeah.
Think that's going to be enough?
Yeah.
No problem.
With the right people on, then it's no problem.
With the right people.
Yeah.
Exactly. People have to be highly trained to work on this?
Yeah, for sure.
What sort of training?
Yeah, I think they have to be familiar with all the things because it's a special tool, it's a special vessel, and they have to be quite familiar with the whole system. Otherwise, it's dangerous and it takes too long time.
But there's always danger. Building projects this size do have human costs. 5 construction workers have been killed here, most of them in falls. Professor Gimsing says death and injury are to be expected.
If you have a job where you can say now the number of hours worked on this project would give a certain number of people that would die, and you suddenly say this is 3 or 4 times, then there's definitely something wrong about that project compared to other projects.
But you think 5 is normal?
I think that the size taken into account, that is unfortunately about the number you would expect.
Safety is also a concern to bridge users. In 1940, look what wind did to this bridge in Tacoma, Washington. Could winds be too blustery on some days to drive across the Northumberland Strait? Bridge builders say no. Small-scale models of both Danish bridges were put through wind tunnel tests. Scientists concluded even twice hurricane-force winds would not damage the bridge. Back in Canada, in a wind tunnel at the University of Western Ontario, engineers are exposing the Strait Crossing Bridge to wind turbulence tests. So far, tests indicate the high sides of the bridge will deflect wind. Scientists say it would take a 160-kilometer-an-hour wind to make a high-sided truck unstable. That speed is only seen in the Northumberland Strait every 50 years or so. But there's one key factor that wind specialists like Dr. Alan Davenport are still working on.
The joint pressure of ice and wind, and the effect of the wind on the ice creates some very important loads for the pier, and they will be looked at in detail.
Another major concern to islanders and Danes alike is the very real possibility of ships running into the bridge. Even after the Danish link is complete, there will be more than 20,000 vessels traveling through the busy international waterway of the Great Belt every year. That compares with about 50 that ply the Northumberland Strait. The Danish builder has come up with a sophisticated video surveillance system to deal with ships that may go off course. Eric Bernicke is in charge.
A number
of long-range TV cameras are going to be set up. Infrared things that can see through fog and mist up there, that can see ships coming down from the north.
Video cameras.
Yes. And a similar set down here on the island of Langeland. They can identify the ships and they can see if they are big or high enough to be a danger to the West Bridge. And then right here on the bridge there'll be a third set of cameras with night vision, so if anyone comes along and tries to go through, they can be identified and photographed and be fined afterwards.
And if someone runs into the bridge, you've got it on tape.
Yes, but hopefully they won't do it because there's a man control center which will call captains on the radio and tell them to take another course so they don't get into danger. After all, if a ship hits the bridge, it's the ship that gets the worst of things.
These precautions aren't in place yet. That may explain why 2 ships have already rammed the West Bridge. In 1992, a German captain went off course. He ended up clipping off the top 10 meters of his ship's mast. And last year, this ferry lost power and ran into the bridge. Minor repairs were needed to both.
Will the bridge have to be shut down if such repairs have to be done when there is traffic?
Not such minor repairs, that can be done without. What we are talking about is a major interruption where a very large ship comes full speed down and hits the bridge. If it moves the superstructure of the bridge, obviously the traffic and the bridge has got to be taken out of operation for repairs. But that really takes a major ship to do that.
But it could happen.
Well, risk analysis has said, or we have designed the bridge assuming that this may happen once every 10,000 years.
And the bridge won't last that long.
No. But in other words, the bridge is designed for 100 years. So we are allowing a 1% chance that it will happen once in these 100 years.
1%, eh?
Yes.
There are problems below the ground, too. In 5 months, the twin rail tunnels are scheduled to be finished. The project is more than 2 years behind and 40% over budget. That's $200 million.
There's always a bit of a compromise in these things.
Tunnel director Alistair Biggert also worked on the tunnel under the English Channel. He says there are always surprises when you go underground.
It's the combination of these glacial tills with also the depth and the variability of the tills and the fact that it's the first tunnel in this country. All those things have combined to make it more difficult.
Despite the difficulties, the Danish tunnel is almost finished, less than 2 kilometers to bore. In Canada, Public Works always maintained a tunnel was not an option for the PEI link. They said they were always over budget, seldom completed in time, and difficult to ventilate.
Although 13 kilometres is quite a long distance, you can always cut that distance down by putting in, for instance, a couple of ventilation towers into the sea. Those towers could, in the same way as we have done here on Storebælt, they could be protected by small false islands to protect the towers against ice flows in the winter.
The construction has provided 3,300 jobs, welcome jobs in a stagnant Danish economy. 90% of the work was done by Danes. But it'll force nearly 2,000 ferry workers out of their jobs, and the communities they lived in will suffer. Even though people in Denmark seem to be getting used to the idea of a fixed link, opinions are still mixed.
Frank, I think it's to use too much money. I think we should use something else in Denmark. I think it's nicer to take the boat. I don't think that everything has to go so fast that you have to drive over with the bridge.
I like the bridge, yes.
You like it?
Yes, we look forward to see it ready, yes.
Why?
Because I think it's a great, marvelous building.
Danish people are a nation of sailors. They have always been used to the waters and used to sail. And therefore I don't think we need it. It's I don't know the word in English, it's a prestige project for politicians.
In 4 years' time, this parking compound in this ferry terminal in eastern Denmark will be empty. Then will begin a great social and economic experiment for this little country. Will the economic payoffs of a bridge be worth the risks?
We'll explore those questions tomorrow on Lessons from Denmark. I'm Sarah Fraser in Korsør. The town of Korsør in East Denmark. Founded in medieval times, it's steeped in history, and right now embroiled in conflict. Like Borden and Tormentine, this sleepy town of 20,000 people has a lot to lose and a lot to gain from the fixed link. When the last ferry sails in 4 years, so too will go 2,000 ferry workers. Most of them live and pay taxes in Korsør.
About 70 people here in this house.
Per Madsen is the town's planning director. He says the town has done studies that project unemployment of 25% when the ferry workers leave if the state government doesn't step in.
If you have 25% unemployment in Korsør, it's very expensive for the rest of society. The tax rate increase, and people who worked and pay will move away from Korsør. They will move to other parts of Denmark where it's much cheaper.
So have you signed an agreement with the government, or are you just counting on them?
They decided, the parties behind the big project, the Great Belt project, have decided in '86 to help Korsør. In the solution or the agreement, they said they have write down that it is an obligation for the government to help Korsør. So it is written down, but there is no amount of jobs on or time schedule for new jobs in Korsør. We have to fight all the time and to knock at the government's door and said, you promise in '86, and we have done it for the last 5-6 years. We thought they will give us the job, but we have to fight for them.
The government has fulfilled part of its promise. It moved a naval base from Copenhagen to Korsør. 1,100 jobs moved with it. But the town says it wants the government to replace all 2,000 jobs it'll lose. If that doesn't happen,
people will escape from Korsør.
People will leave?
Yes.
That doesn't sound very good.
No. Because it's cheaper to stay in other parts in Denmark. And if we raise the tax, people escape to Fyn, Zealand. And then we lose more money and it will go down for Korsør.
Across the waters of the Great Belt, things have been on the upside for the town of Nyborg. Businesses like taverns were busy while the West Bridge was being built.
You have a lot of memories here.
Oh yes, and they still send Christmas cards and so on.
They send you Christmas
Oh
cards?
yes, we have a lot of Christmas cards.
These are construction workers?
All of them.
Tavern owner John Weed served hundreds of new customers over the last 3 years.
Dutch people, Norwegian people, Swedish people, one Canadian, and some American people.
And you got to know them all?
Not with the names, but some of them we call the one with the 4 beers and one with the red nose or something like that. We have different names to them, but it was a good business for 3 years.
Weed has some advice for businesses in Canada that want to cater to bridge builders.
But you don't have to change anything, and you must still be a Dane or a Canadian. You have to be yourself. I think people prefer that.
You don't think businesses should go out of their way to attract these people?
No, no. You don't have to change anything, not the food, not the menu, not another kind of beer. You have to be yourself because most of the people are coming as a guest, so they have to change.
Mayor Niels Andersen says Nyborg took advantage of the good times while they lasted.
We knew from the beginning that it was for a short period that they should build the Western Bridge, and now it's over. And we here in Nyborg, we must go on and have to go look forward and not to look back.
Nyborg too will suffer when it loses 500 ferry workers, some of its best taxpayers. So the town is demanding the state government give it $20 million to buy the former bridge fabrication yard in the town, which the bridge builder turned into a useful deep-water port.
We hope that we can get this compensation, not in understanding that way that there will be 500 new jobs from one moment to another moment, but that we have compensation so that we will get compensation so that we can have a basis from where we can go forward again.
Andersen has some advice for towns like Borden and Tormentine.
I would say when it is possible to get real compensation from the region or from the state, it will be a good thing to get it named and before you start to build the bridge.
The government does have a plan for the 2,000 ferry workers on the east-west route. It's not a cash settlement like Marine Atlantic ferry workers are getting. This is the deal: early retirement for those 58 or over, or jobs on one of the government's 10 other ferry routes.
Did you ever know that you're lucky?
37-year-old Torben Jensen isn't keen on the deal. He's worked the east-west run for 4 years now. He and his wife like it here in Korsør, and they don't want to move.
Vi er ikke interesseret i sådan set at flytte.
We like to stay here, we like living here, we like our neighbors, we like the surroundings. So of course we are not pleased to, let's say, tear out the roots and move somewhere else. But if we have to, of course we will consider it very careful, and it probably will end that we have to do it.
The Jensens bought this house 3 years ago. If they sell in 3 years, when many other ferry workers are pulling out, their house will be worth less than when they bought it, $120,000 less.
If we have to sell at the time when the ferry line closes, and that means a loss of money for me, and that's why I'm not glad of moving out of here, because I'm not glad of losing money.
Could this be an opportunity for them to try to cut back on staff in hard times?
Yes. They will have to cut staff, because today we are, in brackets, too high on the staff side. The income compared to the cost of sailing the ferries is not at the best side because the costs and the income don't compare. The costs are much higher than the income, and we can't raise the ticket prices, and the ticket prices is the only place that we can get our income.
One business that's flourished, as it likely will in the Maritimes, is security for the construction companies.
Those are the concrete pieces which is being taken, offloaded here and taken to the tunnel construction.
Dennis Christensen is one of 25 new people hired by the IKE security company in Korsør.
I think the big chief was thinking that, all right, now is the chance. If I can help to employ some other people. Idea was, and the area was booming, and the demand was there, so he grabbed the chance, and he got it.
And now you have a good job.
Yeah.
Are you worried about what's going to happen when it ends?
No.
Why not?
Because the social security system in Denmark is, the people, our people, we don't think that much of what happens tomorrow. Because the social security net, which we are having, is a very strong one.
A footnote, the extra guards seem to be needed. The day we did this interview, guards arrested 3 workers stealing tools. One sector that can't wait for the bridge to be finished is Denmark's massive food processing industry. Nyborg Lindfrost is a frozen food company that distributes to 1,400 Danish supermarkets. Company president Jens Kronberg says he's already been able to attract new international business because of the link.
Well, you see, our company is placed right in the middle of Denmark. But until now, we have to cross the water with ferries. And the ferries takes about 1 hour, 1.5 hours to cross the sea. After we are having the bridge, we could be able to cross the water in 10-15 minutes. This will reduce our transportation time to Copenhagen a lot. So we will now be able to reach Copenhagen in about 1 hour and 15 minutes.
Why is that so important to your bottom line?
Well, this is a way of attracting new customers to our business here. We are a company, a logistic company, distributing frozen foods, and speed is a very important factor.
It's true that people will travel to see a fixed link being built. More than 600,000 people have come to see the Great Belt project in the past 5 years. The bridge builders own this exhibition center near Korsør, for which they charge admission. The PEI government says it plans a world-class exhibition center and transportation museum for Borden too. The advice from Denmark is, make it as interesting as possible.
That's the real thing. You can touch it and so. That's. I think it's important when you're coming to into the exhibition, you have the aha effect. You are coming through the door, and then you are saying, "Ah." And then it's important too that you are telling the people what's this about.
That's been one of the big questions in Prince Edward Island. Will the bridge actually be a tourist attraction? Will people come to look at it? What do you think?
A bridge itself will sell nothing. But all the action you are doing around it will sell a lot.
If you hype it, they will come.
Yes.
Hej. Velkommen til.
This little hotel in Korsør got its start 2 years ago from tourists coming to see the bridge.
Of course, tourists coming to see the bridge, and like you're going to see the bridge, and of course we have the benefits of this, and like we have a lot of people. One of the other way they have something to do with the bridge, but it isn't bridge workers as we had before. So of course we have some kind of benefit.
Many Danes see the Great Belt Link as an opportunity for their country to better itself economically. But as we've seen, there's still a great deal of worry and uncertainty over the future. People's lives are being turned upside down here, and no one can say for sure what's going to happen in the future. And there's still a great deal of concern over the environment.
We'll explore the environmental questions tomorrow on Lessons from Denmark. I'm Sarah Fraser in Korsør. The Great Belt Link in Denmark adds up to being the longest combined road and rail link in the world. But there's great concern in some quarters over what this $5 billion megaproject has done and will do to the environment, especially the fishery.
One of the greatest concerns here has been the flow of oxygen-rich salt water from the North Sea into the mostly freshwater Baltic Sea. It's a delicate balance, critical to fish and plant life in the Great Belt. These pillars will block some of the flow, but the Danish government has decreed there must be absolutely no impact on the flow of water back and forth. So the company building the bridge has come up with what it calls the zero-impact solution.
In order to restore the water flow, the company has dredged up huge tracts of the ocean floor. Storebælt's managing director is Mogens Bundgaard Nielsen, a former deputy minister of the environment. He says the zero-impact solution works.
But at the end of the day, when we finish a job, or maybe 2 or 3 years later, you will have an environment in the Great Belt area which is very much like the one you had before we got there. Plus, you've got a beautiful bridge. It's one of the biggest construction projects in the world, after all. Plus, you get an environment which has not been damaged.
You sound very proud of it.
Well, you gotta be. I mean, this is an engineer's dream. I mean, what can you do? I mean, you put something here for the next 100 years. This is what you're doing with your bridges too.
The job of measuring the flow of water around the bridge is done here at the Danish Hydraulic Institute outside Copenhagen. The company is independent of government and makes most of its money as a consultant for industry.
Oh, we have worked on this project since 1987, and now we are in the final end of it. So we're going
Jacob Steenmoller is the head of the Hydraulic Institute's environmental division. The Institute has lowered 100 sensors into the water around the bridge to monitor its oxygen, salinity, currents, and temperature. There will be similar, although less extensive monitoring in the Northumberland Strait. In Denmark, the information is transmitted back to a computer model to let engineers there know if the zero solution is working. The builders say the computer model calculates the flow and the blocking. This shows the water flow before the link was built, and this, their calculation afterwards, when the seabed's been deepened.
And you can see the effect, the reduction in flow is now the red part.
But there is still some reduction in flow there.
Yes.
That's not zero.
That's not zero, and that's what we have left in the structure that is actually being built. This is the situation as it is today. if compensation dredging is not performed, if we do not make compensation dredging. But obviously you cannot have around 100 huge bridge piers in the water and some landfilling without having some effect, and that's what you see here.
But some environmentalists say this method of monitoring the effects of the bridge doesn't work.
One of the most active environmental groups in this country is the Danish Society for the Preservation of Nature. Its headquarters are right here in downtown Copenhagen.
David Railing, the Society's executive director, says the fixed link is bad for Denmark. He says the Danish people had no say in the project. It's hurt the fishery, and the whole thing will create excess traffic pollution.
There is no such thing as a zero-tolerance solution when you are talking about a project of this magnitude. You can try to the best of your ability to minimize the effects, but experts only do and can do what you pay them to do, and they cannot create a computer model that, when it's only two-dimensional, can take into account also what's in the third dimension and the effects of air pressure and changing winds plus different temperatures.
So is there a computer model you feel that would work?
I think we should be somewhat humble in our attitude towards computer models. They can be a very helpful tool, but once politicians start soothing their electorate by saying the computer model has said it's okay, then you have serious reasons to worry.
The Hydraulic Institute defends the computer modeling, a technology it developed.
So you're convinced that what some environmentalists are saying is wrong, that there won't be harm to the environment, to the fishery, because of construction?
I'm convinced that when we have carried out this compensation dredging, there will be no effect on the fisheries of the Baltic Sea. The bridge will have no effect on the salinity balance. It will have no effect on the marine life of the Baltic Sea. But it is a very huge, large structure, so there will be some local effects.
There are hundreds of fishermen in the Great Belt who can attest to what Moeller calls local effects.
Fishing for half a month or...
As in the Northumberland Strait, the Danish builders are compensating fishermen to stay out of the construction areas around the bridge. In Denmark, about 50 fishermen in ports closest to the bridge have received more than $600,000 in the past 5 years. Torben Olsen chairs the local fishing union.
Yeah, do you think overall that the company has treated you fairly, fishermen fairly?
Who get enough? But personally, I think we have got what we has to have. It was fair enough.
What you're due.
Yeah, what you're due. But of course, we are not finished the last compensation agreement of what we permanently has lost of fishing grounds.
As for that permanent damage, the company says there's no money unless fishermen can prove it.
How do you prove that you've lost fishing grounds unless you can see it? Like sometimes with the dredging, you would be able to see the muck in the water and you could prove that. What if there's no muck in the water but you have a feeling that the fishing is gone for a reason?
We have in Denmark a very fine statistic material of what has been landing in the years. So we make an agreement that we compare us to areas close to us and their movements year for year. We compare to how we were moving in landings.
The trends.
Yeah, simple.
Environmentalists say Storebælt has been careless. In 1991, the company dumped about 3.5 million cubic meters of clay into the water to make the island for one of the East Bridge's anchor blocks. Fine dirt particles filled the water for days and settled on the bottom. Fishermen say that ruined fishing in the area for 2 or 3 years.
How do you know for sure that it was that spill that was the problem?
How can we be so sure? But it was the only thing that happened there. So, and was in that near area to where they have been working. So it is, I mean, it is the natural reason for all that what happened this year.
Would the company admit to that, do you think?
Yeah, more or less.
Yes,
more or less. Yeah, they have to, but we had to argue a little bit over it. But
Did you get compensation for that?
It was in some of the agreements of compensation we made that, but it was one of that it was one of the agreements we was not very pleased with.
Not enough money.
Not enough money.
Strait Crossing Joint Venture says it plans to do only 1% of the dredging that was done in Denmark, and it claims that by using different equipment, less than 10% of the muck it dredges from the sea bottom will fall back into the water. As people in Denmark have seen, though, there are no guarantees. The Storebælt company originally promised less than 5% spillage.
When it turned out that the spill of the different materials that were moved around was not 5% as was promised, but in certain instances actually 40%, the project should instantly have been discontinued.
The Strait Crossing Bridge will be monitored by a so-called independent panel of experts from across Canada. $1 to $2 million will be spent. Storebælt's activity was also evaluated by a panel of experts. Critics complain the panel was given only the information that Storebælt wanted it to have, and it wasn't given enough time.
The environmental organizations in Denmark have regarded the international panel of experts as a smokescreen for a decision that was already made. No serious change in the project was a result of what the international expert panel said, and no serious change could have taken place because that was not the idea. The idea was just to have a group of dignified experts applaud and say everything is basically okay.
The head of the company argues time is money.
We know we've been criticized for not giving them enough time. But then again, if you ask scientists, I mean, they tend to, well, they always want more time. I mean, if they find a solution on this, there's undoubtedly there'll be as many problems, new problems raised, and they want to solve those too. So we believe that with the panel, we struck, which was a feasible balance between what one could call the desire for scientists to do a neat job, and the pressure that we are underneath, that we are subjected to. I mean, we are a heavy borrower. We are borrowing 5 billion Danish kroner each year. So it's a lot of production that goes through this company, which means that if we are delayed too much, we lose an awful lot of money.
In Prince Edward Island, some people have suggested the bridge piers could actually attract fish.
I don't think it will be so well, but of course there are some effects of that, but I don't think it will be better because of the bridge, but I don't think it will be worse when they have finished the project and they are gone about 2, 3, 4, 5 years. It will be very natural all over.
So overall, you're not unhappy with the project?
No, I think when it is finished and the people who has been fishing on that time will not have a very great effect of it.
Do you have any advice for fishermen in Prince Edward Island who are very worried about the effects of a bridge like the West Bridge on their fishery? It's a very valuable fishery.
Of course, they had to be looking that all things is to be done so it don't harm the nature more than absolutely necessary.
People in Borden and Tormentine will soon be living next to a huge concrete fabrication yard. The yard for Denmark's West Bridge was built right next to a tightly packed residential area of Nyborg. Bright lights and noise kept people awake day and night as the enormous sections for the West Bridge were cast, then floated out to be placed. When the fish left the area, so did dozens of swans that used to feed on them. And did you know that site was coming in?
No, I didn't.
When you bought the house?
No.
Would you have moved here?
Maybe not. I don't know.
Flemming Rasmussen can tell you living in the site's backyard was no picnic, especially when the yard was being set up and again when it was being torn down.
A few persons who had problems with tiles falling down in the kitchen, which was then afterwards repaired, of course. And the irritation of feeling that your house is jumping.
Your house is jumping?
You feel it like that.
Why were houses
Vibrating.
When they were doing the pile driving, that would be like somebody coming on the house with a hammer all the time. Well, it was annoying at times, but they were responsive to the problems most of the time, more in the beginning than at the end.
Towards the end, his sister, Mona Holmberg, got a surprise one afternoon in her backyard, just a few houses away. When the company was dismantling the yard, rocks rained down on her and her neighbors when the company was setting off explosions. One blast caused minor damage to roofs.
Did you think that you should get some sort of compensation for the bother of things like that?
No, we were told from the start that we wouldn't get anything. This is the state building and you won't get any compensation. So,
what do you think of that?
Well, that's common in Denmark, that you don't get anything. So, I didn't expect anything.
But is it right, all the same?
I don't know how to find out how much to pay for that. How much value is our nature, how much value is our night sleep, I don't know. But you can get used to a lot of things. And now, when it's over, it's over.
The company paid for the repairs to the roofs. Her brother, meanwhile, formed a citizens committee to deal with the company. He advises maritimers who live near the fabrication yards to stick up for themselves.
I would say it would be very important on an early stage to have a good contact with the company, with the authorities around there, to form a citizen group to make this cooperation work well. Because I suppose your situation is exactly the same as here. The bridge is decided. There's no use of going against that, but try to get the neighborship as good as possible.
It'll take 4 more years before the East Bridge is finished and Danes have full use of the new transportation system across the Great Belt. Environmentalists worry that's 4 more years of environmental risk. But the project is well advanced now. There's no turning back.
As far as we human beings are concerned, there definitely has been a loss of values in the Great Belt area. The Baltic may be literally in dire straits, and car traffic will be even more of a burden upon Denmark and Scandinavia.
With the possible construction of 2 more bridges over the next 15 years linking Denmark to Sweden and Germany, this country sees prosperity across the water in the rest of Europe and in the emerging economies of the former Soviet republics. But there's a price to be paid. Historians will record what happened. Scientists will argue over whether it was worth it. I'm Sarah Fraser in Copenhagen, Denmark.